Hello all. My apologies for not having made many videos or streamed in the past few months. I've been busy with work and a lot of stress has led to me bringing it onto the channel, and you saw a lot of that with my stress in the Dota 2 video that I streamed last. I don't want to bring that stress from work and real life into the channel because it doesn't make for good videos, or at least I hope you guys don't want to see me suffer that much. I plan to put out more Warhammer multiplayer videos as I would look to get more into the multiplayer scene, as well as more videos on Dota 2, as I find one of my favorite heroes is got a rework, and it's going to be fairly entertaining to have people finally tolerate techies. They've worked to make him a more normal hero that won't frustrate people as much, which I saw the changes as needed to happen, unfortunately. With the more focus that Warhammer 3 is done on a multiplayer perspective, in the sense that the multiplayer scene seems more, they've better implemented stuff to make it more clear and readable for people playing multiplayer to see what's going on and what other tooltips and everything and what's actually happening with your units, as well as the domination mode and the multiplayer campaigns. I'm going to look to get involved in that. But with all that said, well, there's much more to be said. That's all for the intro there, and let's get into the topic of the video. That's like a more content channel update, etc. A content creator on YouTube by the name of The Great Book of Grudges recently uploaded and published a video titled Slaanesh Sucks Right Now, Total Warhammer 3 Faction Review. To be more precise, Total War, Warhammer 3 Faction Review. I'll link the video in the description so you guys can form your own opinion on the matter, and this is my response to said video. This is not to defame, slander, or besmirch the Great Book of Grudges. It is a sharing opinion in direct correlation with his sharing of opinion. The goal here is that we should be finding the correct answer, and overall not trying to just be right. With all that said, let's take a drink of water and let's begin. Firstly, I'm playing on normal as Seducer Slaanesh. I have a balanced army of 2 times Exalted Demonettes, 2 times Spear Marauders, 1x Slaanesh Fiends, 4x Keeper of Secrets, 4x Way Watchers from the Wood Elf roster to deal with flying units mainly, 4x Hellstriders of Slaanesh, Nakari, and 1 Cultist of Slaanesh, 1 Allurus of Slaanesh Shadow, and this stack by no means is a Doom stack and has done well without losing an entire unit each fight. They can get beaten up, but that's mainly in 2 or 3 to 1 army fights. My solution to most settlement battles has been to secure points with Cav or Fiends and take fights where I can. Demonettes charging in with Marauders taking the brunt, and even charging Cav in the front and pulling them out to cycle charge in the melee repeatedly. I've seen the AI doing this with Slaanesh as well. It's quite effective, and yes, I'm referring to cycle charge in the front repeatedly when they have no other option, to basically point out that the AI isn't flawed in that manner. Shards of Slaanesh can be effective, and I sometimes use Pendulum, but I've gotten more use out of Shards and Pit of Shades than Pendulum, to denote that whole exploit of, oh, you're just using Pendulum to win. One problem I think you may be having, and this is directly addressing Book of Grudges, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, is that you're trying to use a more typical hammer and anvil style. Marauders with Hell Scourges are great for holding, yes, but I took a look at their cost, what they do for that cost, damage, stat increases, shield color, model number, as in shield color to the effectiveness of their shield, model number, and the effectiveness in relation to their role in the Slaanesh roster, and they don't really fit the Slaanesh's approach to a battle, or their approach, unfortunately. They are often a niche unit for Slaanesh, I find, as most of the Slaanesh roster for me moves like water. In that I don't often have a front line that I can stand behind. I charge them with cav and chariots and keep moving, repeatedly charging rear, side, front, and not getting stuck in for too long. Routing units, banishing units, shattering units. is all the name of the game for Slaanesh. Early on, I found I was losing my demonettes and my marauders were ranking up because they simply would survive due to routing, at least when the fights got tough. However, I found later on the reason I was losing demonettes is because I was not pulling them back into reserve when I should. Units with the banishing and demonic mechanic instead of the morale mechanic often need to be pulled back a lot sooner than units that will rout because they start taking damage and then start getting banished rather quickly, especially when their fronts aren't secure. If it's really a tough fight and you can afford it, pull back your soldiers that have already done their worth. One really glaring issue for me and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you practice micro on the regular. I watched hours of your streams with Slaanesh and I found you losing track of units often. Losing units due to having them idle, or trying to use them as something to hold while you cycled around for a big rear charge. Issue with that is, as many of my friends and some of the more multiplayer-centric content creators have pointed out, Slaanesh is a high micro faction. If you do not micro your heart out while playing them, you won't get much out of them. Every fight is a play. Every movement is a well-coordinated choreography. And finally, every battle a stage. You responded to me once during a stream saying that it is difficult to speak to an audience and focus on the game at the same time. I gave that the benefit of the doubt. But then you told your stream that you were going to go silent for a while so that you could focus on a difficult battle, and I saw the same faults shine through. I really want to believe you, but I also am not willing to misrepresent a faction's strengths and weaknesses, as it doesn't help balance in any regard. In mention to your opinions on the chariots, they do have issues with mass. The exalted chariots seem to have the least. The other chariots have issues with getting stuck on each other and not dealing their damage. This I agree with in a complete manner, and have nothing to say on the matter, really. I think it's rather unfair, however, to say to CA that they fixed nothing with the patch. I felt that ill-deserved. They fixed that an entire way to play the game, multiplayer, was able to be played in the way it was intended, through lobbies, matchmaking, and invites, and not just invites. I understand that you want something done. I understand what you want done, at least from what you've expressed in your video. I also understand, to an extent, you have to give the carrot and the stick. In closing, I find myself recruiting allied faction units when I want a lazier option for the way Slaanesh has to do it. Chaos Warriors of Khorne for when I wanted an easier rear charge. A fire and forget unit. That doesn't really work with Slaanesh's roster when you get into their higher tier units. The higher you go, the more micro you have to dedicate, and the more effectiveness you'll get when you actually dedicate that micro-intensive workout. Way Watchers were recruited because I wanted to cheese out some projectiles in a game where projectiles seem to be godlike and wood elves are often broken. Again, I do the same with, say, Seekers, or the same amount of damage and effectiveness with Seekers, but in a different manner and the same cost. Way Watchers being fire and forget as opposed to constant micro. I'm recently switching out my Way Watchers for Heart Seekers as they fit the roster more in terms of playstyle, i.e. while the Way Watchers keep up in terms of speed and the way they deal with their DPS, or the frequent and height of the DPS, it is often counterintuitive to the rest of the army, which is slamming into the enemy repeatedly from all angles, leaving the Way Watchers to get babysabbed by some spears because some Furies will nearly kill them. Take care. I really don't know why you introduce yourself twice, Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan, but it's rather pointless. Pick one, stick with it. Personally, the Nathan bit to me, without being tongue-in-cheek, seems a bit personal. like Daniel the Demon Prince was funny and endearing because it was done in an ironic way. But other than that, I really just think Slaanesh really fits with the way they should play. I mean, isn't it thematic for Slaanesh to haphazardly and somewhat elegantly slam repeatedly into a surface until it's wet and bloody? With that said, I mean, this is Reaper God 36 signing off, and take care.